Good morning. My name is Kyle Ruffin. Welcome to Why We Give, a celebration of South Jersey women who give back. The seed for this event was planted during a conversation I had with a fellow board member. He asked me to continue to pursue a candidate for this particular board, even though she was clearly very engaged in her sorority. When I explained that, he shook his head and said, "That's not a big deal." He wasn't being mean or dismissive, he just didn't understand what it means to be an active member of a black sorority. It's a lifetime commitment of giving back. Members literally pledge to serve. More importantly, their work aims to make the same kind of difference that other organizations are making. That's when I began to understand that giving takes place within communities. The communities aren't always based on geography. They're often formed around commonalities of gender, culture, or religion, commonalities of experience or worldview. Giving is personal, and the giving community you belong to meets a basic human need to join with like minded people around a common cause. It's a community in which what you have to give is valued and appreciated. A community where you feel like an important part of the results that are achieved. Today, we come together because of a coalition of organizations that share that understanding of community. Our wonderful steering committee is made up of local women who represent groups that are bound together by their culture or religion, women who have joined together to the benefit of a region they love, and women who lead organizations while boldly bringing the feminine perspective to the table. Why women, you might ask? I come back to the importance of community. And as you'll hear in our keynote address by Dr. Deborah Mesh from the Lilly School of Philanthropy's Women's Philanthropy Institute at the University of Indiana, men and women do approach giving differently. Today's program is one small step toward expanding our understanding of the big picture of South Jersey givers. Diversity in giving is all around us. You will hear from groups you may not be aware of, but each has a long history of service and philanthropy in our backyard. Women who give individually and collectively. Women who roll up their sleeves and get involved with the organizations and the people they support. Women who are using their resources and expertise to shape the discussion and influence how we create healthy and educated communities. These and many other initiatives are on parallel journeys to the same destination, a just and equitable society. As we go through today's program, I encourage you to look for opportunities to collaborate, to learn more, to engage in ways that change the equation. Let's make 1 plus 1 equal 3. Open your minds to a better understanding and appreciation for the different ways people are actively giving back throughout South Jersey. Through that expanded understanding and appreciation, we maximize the impact of our giving and volunteerism and learn to appreciate different approaches in other aspects of our lives. Before we get on with the program, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Community Foundation of South Jersey is a driver of philanthropy and engagement in our region. They work with South Jersey residents, businesses, and nonprofits that want to harness the power of their philanthropy to meaningfully impact the issues they care about. The foundation helps donors to create funds, both large and small, and plays a leadership role in facilitating change in New Jersey's lower 8 counties. The law firm of Weber Gallagher represents businesses, employers, and individuals in multiple areas of law. They are also committed to community social responsibility. They were the first law firm to become a sponsor of Impact 100 South Jersey, one of the organizations you'll hear from later today. They have also sponsored the Impact 100 South Jersey membership for firm partner Jennifer Laver for the past 4 years. We are grateful to have their support for today's program. We will begin today with Dr. Deborah Mesh, who will be followed by our 2 panels, Why We Give and How We Give. To keep the program moving, our question and answer period will follow the second panel discussion. Throughout the morning, we encourage you to use the chat section to pose your questions. We will get to as many as possible. We will end today's program with remarks from Extraordinary U's June Grushka-Rosen, who will share ways we can put what we hear today to use. You should have received an email with a link to the booklet for today's program. The agenda and descriptions of the speakers and the organizations they represent are in the booklet, as well as their contact information. If you do not have it, there is a link in the chat where you can access the booklet. It is now my pleasure to hand you off to Dr. Deborah Mesh.
Good morning. I am delighted to be here today to celebrate the inspiring women of South Jersey and to hear their stories during the panel presentation later this morning. I'm so grateful to the Community Foundation of South Jersey and all of the participating partners for bringing together the many faces and voices of women's philanthropy to celebrate your accomplishments, to think about your work in the context of the research, and to dream about the future of bold philanthropy. The woman in this slide is an example of bold philanthropy. This is Agnes Gunn, a New York philanthropist born into a banking family from Cleveland, Ohio. While Gunn has had a lifelong interest in art, an astonishing collection of contemporary art, and more than 40 years of service on museum boards and as a patron of the arts, her action in early 2017 reflects the bold new direction women are taking with their philanthropy. What more could she do? Agnes Gunn sold her painting, Roy Lichtenstein's masterpiece, for more than $150 million and used $100 million of the proceeds to start the Art for Justice Fund. The Art for Justice Fund supports criminal justice reform and aims to reduce mass incarceration in the United States. Gunn's motivations were simple and straightforward. She has 6 African-American grandchildren, and she worried about their future. In an interview, she said, "This is the one thing I can do before I die. This is what I need to do." But she did not stop there. She challenged other art collectors to join her in the effort, and many have. Today, the fund has awarded 141 grants across 116 grantees, totaling more than $58 million. 3 characteristics are defining the next chapter of women's philanthropy, emerge from this story and her account. First, Aggie Gunn is one of among many women today across the income spectrum who are using all of their resources and or combining their resources to address pressing issues around them. Second, she modeled one of the most distinct aspects of women's philanthropy when she invited others in her peer network to join with her in the effort. And third, she has been publicly visible with the gift, its purpose, and her story. As an example, Aggie Gunn's filmmaker daughter, Catherine Gunn, premiered a documentary about her at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival in February. At the Women's Philanthropy Institute, we are hearing more and more stories like Gunn's from Asian American women who pool their resources in a giving circle to support women-led projects that use arts and culture to affect social change, to a retired school teacher who created 6 charitable gift annuities in her alma mater and then included all of them in her will. Gathered together this morning are individuals representing leading philanthropic and nonprofit organizations across South Jersey that demonstrate every day how philanthropy matters. Impact 100 of South Jersey, Jewish Community Foundation, Moms Demand Action, Jewish Family and Children's Services of Southern New Jersey, India Temple Association, Continental Societies, Inc., chapter of South Jersey, Delta Sigma Theta. All of the event partners for this program are part of a national system of women problem solvers, innovators, creators, and leaders who help their communities, our country, and the world address our most pressing challenges. Women have always been philanthropic, giving their time, talent, and treasure across centuries. But today we have the opportunity, we have the resources, And we have the need to do more. And women like Agnes Gunn and you are stepping into their philanthropy boldly, proudly, and passionately. But for all this to happen, we have to unlock the full potential of women's philanthropy. We must understand how gender shapes behavior. We at the Women's Philanthropy Institute see three key factors that are shaping and precipitating the seismic change in women's philanthropy: demographics, data, and women's own commitment to driving philanthropy. By most measures today, today's demographic changes benefit women. You know this and you see it every day. More and more women have increased access to education and income and wealth. These are the key predictors of philanthropy. Adults are marrying later in life or not marrying at all. From 1960 to 2015, the percentage of American adults who had never been married more than doubled from 9 to 20%. In 2016, 53% of unmarried US residents aged 18 and older were women, and nearly 50% of all households nationally were maintained by unmarried men and women. According to a Merrill Lynch Age Wave study, there are 20 million widows currently in the US and 1.4 million new widows annually. At the same time, more women are the primary breadwinners of their families. More and more women are financially independent, making big decisions on their own. Some suggest that 90% of women are the CFOs of their household. These factors are central to women's expanding role in philanthropy. Collecting and understanding the data where the Women's Philanthropy Institute fits in. WPI's focus is on research about gender and philanthropy. This field of study is reasonably new. WPI released its first study in 2010, and there were very few studies before that that considered gender as a factor at all in its work. Since 2010, though, we have built an amazing reservoir of findings that point to one incontrovertible fact: gender matters in philanthropy. It seems intuitive, doesn't it? After all, men and women are different in so many ways. The field of fundraising was created at a time when men, predominantly white men, were presumed to be the primary donor. That is no longer true. Donors are men and women. They are all ages, races, ethnicities, sexual orientations, religions and no religion, local and across the globe. Fundraising strategies must adapt to the changing environment and understand that men and women have different motivations for giving and different patterns of giving. One is not better than the other. They are simply different. And women are driving philanthropy today in bold ways at both the grassroots level, at the corporate boardrooms, as individual philanthropists, in giving circles, and as leaders of nonprofits. The best is yet to come as more and more women step fully into their philanthropy and bring others alongside them. Knowledge is power. When individual women and nonprofit leaders understand and embrace the who, why, how, where, and so what of gender differences in philanthropy, we will together change how philanthropy is practiced and ultimately raise more dollars about the causes that we care so deeply about. So let's take a quick look at some of the research on gender differences and get started on accelerating change. When we look at how demographic factors such as age, family dynamics, marital status, income influence men and women, and how that affects charitable giving behavior, the bottom line is that all women across racial and ethnic groups and generations are more likely than their male counterparts to give. So first, let's just look at the data about single women, which is so compelling. For example, across race, ethnicity, income levels, single women are more likely to give than single men. When looking across generations, Gen X, millennial, single women are holding their own in terms of giving compared to pre-boomer women from 40 years ago. Yet when we look at single men and married couples across these generations, we find that this younger generation's giving is lower than the giving of their pre-boomer counterparts from 40 years ago, but not for single women. Giving trends seem to hold true across life cycle. Around retirement, we found that single women and married couples are more likely to give and give more than single men. And they also volunteer more than single men. And we also know that marriage affects giving in positive ways. We know that being married increases both the likelihood and amount of giving. So marriage is good for charitable giving. Married and cohabitating couples tend to give more to charity than single men or single women. So we often say that when single men and women marry each other, that the women socialize the men into philanthropy. And we know that charitable giving decisions vary by households. There are 4 primary ways households make charitable giving decisions in a married couple or cohabitating couple. The household decides jointly, the household decides separately, the husband decides, and the wife decides. The majority of households of the US population give jointly. In a recent study, we were able to segment the population by income and found that for the general US population, nearly 75% of households decide together. And in high net worth households, nearly 50% decide jointly. So what is happening to those households as income and wealth increase, those higher net worth households? More men and women in these higher net worth households are deciding separately. Multiple studies are showing that younger women are driving philanthropy in significant ways. For example, when younger women marry and influence the household giving decisions, their giving is higher than that of their older counterparts. Let's move from the who to the why, and I want you to just think about what motivates you to give. Think about that, and we will not be able to have an interactive session right now, but let's talk about some of the research about what motivates you to give and see if the research resonates your ideas about what motivates you to give. Empathy motivates women's giving. For men, giving is often more about self-interest. This is a matter of degree and priority. It's not that men are not empathetic, but it's because women are socialized into more helping, nurturing, and caring roles from an early age. These behaviors become ingrained and form the basis for many of the actions, including philanthropy. Empathy also drives women's deep engagement with nonprofits. Our research has shown that women are more likely to give to organizations where they have a personal connection or an alignment with a political or philosophical beliefs. In other words, it's their values. They give because their values are in alignment with the nonprofit values. Single women are more likely than single men to cite being on a board or volunteering for an organization as motivations for their giving. Again, this idea of personal involvement. In general, women are less motivated than men by a tax advantage and public recognition. They are highly motivated by connection to and volunteering for the cause they care about. Agnes Gunn's motivation in creating the Art for Justice Fund was personal. This photo is of Agnes and one of her 6 African-American grandchildren. The third area is how. How do women give? In recent years, because women's giving patterns look different from men's, women were often dismissed as not really being significant donors. Here are 4 tangible ways in which gender differences appear. Women spread out their giving more than single men. This specific finding is a significant reason as to why women are underrepresented as donors. If we have $1,000 and as women allocate a smaller amount, let's say $100 to 10 organizations, no one nonprofit appreciates the extent of the generosity. Women like to give together collectively. With the exponential growth of giving circles over the past 10 years, women continue to comprise the majority of collecting giving network members. About 70% of all giving circles report that women make up more than half their membership. Impact 100 is a great example. Giving circles are a force to be reckoned with in philanthropy. We released a new study on giving circles, the first landscape in 10 years. The study found that the number of giving circles in the US has tripled over the 10 years from 2007 to 2017. They have allocated almost 1.3 billion to local communities over the past 35 years. Women are still a majority of giving circle members, but now we're seeing a tremendous growth in the diversity of the ecosystem with LGBT, men only, Jewish, African American, Latinx bonding together to form their giving circles. The growth of the giving circle movement has provided countless opportunities for women in philanthropy. Women have stepped fully into leadership roles. They've learned about their communities and engaged deeply with nonprofits, and in some cases, influenced public policy. Women's engagement with giving circles, women's funds, and other women-led groups affirm that women are not willing to wait in line for leadership positions at more traditional or large nonprofits. They create models of engagement that reflect their motivations and their own behaviors. Research has shown that donors involved in giving circles and other collective giving models give more. They give more strategically, are more knowledgeable about problems in their community, and are more highly engaged in their community. We've also learned about the power of the network to drive women's philanthropy. Networks, whether giving circles or women-led organizations like Continental Societies and Moms Demand Action, provide opportunities for the participants to build trust, which is a valuable and increasingly rare asset in our communities today. The trust is twofold among the participants and between the participants and the institutions that they support. The networks allow women to come together to make change in the world, and in some cases, leverage their resources together for greater impact. Few of us may have the resources that Agnes Gunn has, but most of us can leverage our networks in positive, powerful, and productive ways for philanthropy. Here is another example of how that happens. When women leverage technology for their giving more than men. Our study on giving behavior on Giving Tuesday found that women are more likely than men to give on special designated giving days. While giving goes up sharply for both men and women on Giving Tuesday, and women and men give approximately equal amounts on that day, women's greater participation means a greater total amount of giving by women. And the final difference is that women are more likely to use impact investing to complement their charitable giving, while men are more likely to use impact investing in place of their charitable giving. The last area is so what? What is the outcome of all the giving? We know that the outcome for fundraisers is they want to meet their goals. We know the outcome for nonprofits is they want to raise funds to meet their mission. But what about us? What about the donors? Here is a message that's quite simple. Giving makes us all happy, but there are differences in when that happiness occurs. For single men, The greatest increase in life satisfaction comes when they become donors. It's that trigger that goes from non-donor to donor that increases life satisfaction in a household for single men. For single and married women, life satisfaction increases most when they increase their giving as a percentage of their income. And in households where the wife influences the giving decision, the more a household gives as a percentage of income, the happier that household is. A common theme that emerges from the research is that women are driving philanthropy individually, in networks, in households. The research is powerful. It allows individuals to connect their personal experiences to the broader philanthropic landscape. It provides empirical data to help change assumptions, attitudes, and behaviors around who is philanthropic. It can be a tool to help women donors advocate for the kind of engagement they wish to have with nonprofits that they support, perhaps to open up more opportunities for board service and leadership or special events designed for them. And lastly, it can be a sounding board, a wake-up call, and a valuable resource to carry forward on your philanthropic journey. Tangible, credible, empirical evidence of the vital role that women play in philanthropy. Let's change who we view as philanthropists, all of us. Women's philanthropy, long the backbone of civic engagement in this country, continues to evolve. Today, women contribute their time, their talent, their treasure in innovative, creative, and trailblazing ways. And more women among us are thinking about philanthropy in big and bold ways, like Agnes Gunn, by using all of their resources, inviting others to join them, and being publicly visible. So let's now turn to a conversation to hear from our stellar women on these panels who are doing just that. Thank you.
Well, welcome to the panel session of today on Why We Give. I'm Jennifer Lewis Hall. I'm one of the anchors here at PHL 17 and also the manager of community affairs for our station in Philadelphia. So if you haven't had a chance to check us out and what we do in our morning show and our crew and how we inform the community and what we do in the community, we certainly hope that you will. Hopefully you're having a great start to your day. I was able to listen in and was so motivated as to thinking about what really motivates us to give. I grew up in a family of givers. I think it's probably the thing that I'm proudest of, and generationally, I think it really has helped to form and shape my view of what society and the world should really be about. And as my mother always used to say, giving feels so good. So glad that you're with us, glad you're here with me. We're going to get right to a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to talk a little bit about each of the panelists, but again, that is all in your book, in the booklet that you got online. We're going to have two panels, so we're going to actually start with Why We Give, but we'll be able to take questions at the end of the second panel. So keep your questions flowing. We have folks that are keeping track of those questions and keeping those going in the chat room. We'll be able to address those at the end, again, of the second panel. So I want to get right to our first panel. Welcome, everyone. Again, we're talking about why we give. And we have about a half an hour together. So we want to get plenty of answers in here and responses from you all as well. So we want to keep things moving. Again, I'm coming to you from the PHL 17 studios right here in Philadelphia. So why we give, our panel discussion this morning. We have joining us Joanne Caesar, who is representing and a part of the illustrious Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the South Jersey chapter. We also have with us Suhag Shukla, Hindu American Foundation. We have Sadria Schaefer with us from the Jewish Community Foundation as well. We have Fran Sykes, the Pascal Sykes Foundation. Welcome, Fran. And we also have Shawnee Knuckles with us from Moms Demand Action. So good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
We are certainly ready for this discussion, and we've been querying, a lot of your responses and really preparing for this. So I thank Kyle for all of the work that she put into this and everyone involved. So important. We want to talk about on this first panel, why we give. We're looking at, as our first question, reasons to do. What are some of the reasons that volunteers or members give as some of their reasons for joining your organization, and really thinking about why they remain committed? I think that's such a great question. So much is pulling at us. There's so many things to do, and there's such a great need. So again, what are some of the reasons that volunteers and members give for joining your organization, and why do they remain committed? Fran, I'd like you to jump in here, and then we'll have a couple of you also join us in this discussion on this question. We'll be making the rounds on all of these questions. Fran, can you start?
Okay, I'll start. I was thinking about this, especially in light of the excellent talk we received, and rethinking some of my things. But my original response remains the same. I give because through none of my doing whatsoever, I was blessed. And so in a sense, what I have is not mine. It was given to me. I didn't deserve it. And I am merely a custodian to using it in a responsible way. That's my primary objective. Secondly, they say, what makes me happy? That doesn't necessarily make me happy, because it's a responsibility. What makes me happy, as I keep saying, is to lie on a warm beach with a trashy female novel in my hand. That's what makes me happy. But I know I couldn't spend my life doing that. So I think my major reason is the religious one, that it's a responsibility, and it's stuff I really didn't deserve. So
kind of paying it forward there, Fran, I certainly hear you. You talked about being blessed. I would like for Suag to join us and talk about a little bit about your perspective and looking at that and remaining committed, and why volunteers do what they do.
So, when I saw this question, what came to mind was something that a donor said to me, who was also a regional volunteer. And she said, I like you, I respect you, and I trust you. And that's why I give. That she gave her time, and she gave financially. And that really said it all to me. It also encaptured my motivation for when I don't have my executive director of a nonprofit hat on, and I'm volunteering in the community. Mm-hmm. So essentially, and it was interesting to hear Dr. Mesh, because the research seems to support what I'm seeing on the ground, that you can support a cause in theory, whether it's, uplifting those who are economically disadvantaged, or fulfilling literacy gaps, or feeding the hungry, whatever it is. But in order to make that step from supporting something theoretically to supporting financially, or to give time, I really think it comes down to trust. And so as an organization, that's something that we really focus in on, that how do we ensure that the people who are coming to us and our stakeholders who are benefiting from our work can trust us. And it comes down to integrity, doing what you say you're going to do and putting your all into it. Eleanor Roosevelt said, to handle yourself, use your head; to handle others, use your heart. And I think that as we talk about the women's roles in philanthropy, whether it's as a volunteer or whether it's as a leader, I think we're talking a little bit about head leadership and heart leadership, and finding a balance between that. I think that now those are kind of the buzzwords amongst business experts, but that's what Eleanor Roosevelt was getting to. And I think that when you try to bring both of those, it allows us to handle disagreements. It allows us to handle the challenges. and really cultivate a platform for camaraderie and community to serve a higher good.
Wow, that's powerful. And I want to get one more response in here, and then we'll get to our next question. As the manager of community affairs and working as the host of the show In Focus and now Politics in Focus, we work with so many people. We hear from so many people in the community across a broad front, people who are doing all sorts of things with nonprofits, and what continues to drive them, even in times like this, when the resources can be few, when there are so many different challenges in the community in which they are working in or living in, or cultivating a group of children in a group in a community, continuing to get people to take part in that. Joanne, can you jump in here as well and tell us sort of how you keep driving that forward and captivating folks to do that?
Well, in the organization, we are bonded by community service. We have to, we look for education, we focus on that. We give scholarships, we focus on the physical and mental health of the community. We even focus on the economics, trying to make and help our members of the community become more stable economically. So we have various things that we do. We do Thanksgiving baskets, we give back because we realize there's a big need, and a need is getting larger with more grandparents raising their grandchildren, and they're not getting much assistance. So we have certain components that we focus on, and we constantly, like, you have to be a motivator. You as the leader you have to act like this is part of you, that it's in your heart. And then that just permeates to the rest of the members and other people around you that we do collaborate with. And we make a big push in the community together to make a difference. We look for positive reactions, and we listen to what the community needs are. We ask constantly, what are your concerns at this time? And then we reach out, and as an organization, we sit and we're creative, and we try to be innovative and try to get out there and address their needs. So it's constantly changing from year to year, from month to month. And with COVID now, it's just putting more on our plate to address. But collectively, as a group, we're trying to make a difference in different avenues. And
And
it's not easy.
every bit matters. No, it's not easy. And with resources and the complexities of how we can gather or not gather, all of that is playing a part in making
Yes.
sure that those baskets get to a family. Thank you, all of you, for the work that you're doing, by the way. I want to get to our second question to get some of our other panelists involved in this one as well. This question talks about, what is your most meaningful gift? Do you typically give one large gift to one institution or many smaller gifts to many organizations? I'm actually going to get a little bit of a feel from you all about this question, but I'd actually, if it applies to you, I'd actually like to get Chani in here to talk a little bit about that and how you view that, how you deal with that.
Right. So for a long time, I will say, Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, the most impactful gift that we can make isn't monetary. It's the number of people that we can mobilize at a moment's notice. So our volunteers are actually giving their time and energy and are the boots on the ground to affect the change for which we aspire, which is common sense reforms around gun violence prevention. So whether we're making phone calls around the passage or defeat of a bill, or whether we're gathering together with community partners to support a family or a neighborhood impacted by a horror of a shooting, we're bringing visibility to the issue. We are known by these red shirts. And when these red shirts show up, there are people who see us that might not see everybody else in the room at the moment that is impacted by the issue that we are working on. I will say that in recent years, as we have matured as an organization, we have dipped our toes into fundraising to support the work of community partners who've been working on this issue for far longer than we have. And so I will say that this past year in June, around National Gun Violence Awareness Day, Wear Orange, we were able to raise money to support 14 community-based organizations around the country. Each of those organizations received more than $18,000 from us at a time in the midst of the COVID crisis where gun sales are going up, gun violence is going up. And so that was a particularly meaningful impact that we were able to make in the
And
financial
so many
realm as
people
well.
and so many communities across a broad front are impacted by gun violence and what is currently happening across the country. Thank you for the work that you all are doing as well. And there is such a tremendous outreach from so many groups, but still talking about these issues, certainly on programs that I have as well. Sadria, I'd like you to get in here as well and talk about sort of your most meaningful gift and what that was and how that impacted your organization.
Thank you. My most meaningful gift was a scholarship that I created last year through the Jewish Community Foundation to memorialize my parents. My parents were very dedicated to education. They paid for many people to go to college and to have higher education. And when they passed away, I decided that the best way to memorialize them and to have their legacy live on was to create this scholarship fund that gives money for a needy student to go to college every year. It's easy to do these legacy gifts, just have to take the first step to do them.
Wow, it's still I think as you say that with just such a smile and so heartfelt, perhaps easy, but not always, often, but still every time I think about a student being able to pay that forward, that's amazing because you think about, I guess, not just doing that for today, but what that means generationally moving forward. It can change not only a person, a family, a community, a block, it changes a lot. So, we're very thankful for that. Let's talk about a little bit about what motivates you personally to volunteer your time and donate your resources. I want to get to everybody on this. So if you could, keep your answers fairly brief, but I want to hear from each of you on this particular question, because we heard earlier about what motivates particularly women. And I want to, you talked about your parents, Sadria. So that really just plays into sort of what's on your heart, in your head, and taking action on that. But tell us how that's been either helpful, cathartic, meaningful for you, and then we'll go back around that part about this motivating you.
What motivates me is to have this community be there that was here for me when I was growing up and for my parents growing up, to be there for future generations. And you can do that through sustainable giving. If you give a gift that's sustainable, it ensures a community will live on.
Yeah, that's powerful. Joanne, what motivates you?
Well, my parents, they raised me to always give. They said no matter how much you have in your family, as far as economic, your status, you always have something you can give. So with that, I became an educator and was an administrator, and I always gave, even to my students, no matter what. If they needed something, I found a way to get it for them, to help them, and I'm still giving. And I tell my students all the time, even if you can only give a dime or a nickel, you have more than somebody else. Keep giving, it adds up. And I instill that with my daughter, with the students that I have worked with during the years. And you know what? It does have an impact, and it turns their thinking differently, and not think about self, think about others. So that's where I am now.
That's motivating for you. That's so wonderful. Fran.
Yes, hi. In my case, I think if you see something, and this would go right along probably with the motivator for the gun violence, if you see something that needs to be addressed and you can't really find anybody else who's addressing it, this is the time to step up and begin to address it. Begin to let the rest of the world, of course, starting with your own little circle, know that this is important. And this is something that really has to be addressed. Now, of course, people have to continue to support the worthwhile things that are already started. But there are always things that are for people who are entrepreneurial in their hearts to begin to create slowly. And it takes time, but that to me is really important.
So when you see a need, you're saying when you see a need, step up, right? That's what I'm hearing from you. When you see a need, I guess growing up with the idea that I could, hear my parents saying that, either you're part of kind of the solution that's happening, or you could continue to watch this problem evolve, right? And what are we going to do about it? So, thinking about that, that's definitely something you're saying, take action. That's what I'm hearing from you. And that, of course, can be by giving or doing. If you can jump in here as well with Shani, and then if we could hear from Suha.
Sure. So I would say my motivations evolved. I honestly was pissed off at what I was watching on the news, and anger motivated me. And I really felt like instead of just wailing in social media land about how angry I was, I really needed to figure out how to walk the walk. I will say what continues to make me motivated is another aspect of women's leadership, which is the organization that I volunteer for, is founded on a model of making one-on-one personal connections. So the issue that I was originally impacted by through my television screen and through media has become very personal to me, as I have met people who have walked very different paths than I have to get involved in this issue. And so I now count among my village of people in Moms Demand Action so many people who have survived gun violence themselves and have grown to make those personal connections, have grown to love them. And my continued motivation to work is because of them, and because of this village that I have found. So
yeah, thank you. Suha?
Yeah, I think in one word, selflessness. It's rooted as a fundamental Hindu teaching of selfless service. And when you serve the needs of others, I think that first, it just naturally, your own selfish desires, your own problems, things that might not be as big as you've made them out to be, get pushed to the back burner. And what volunteering provides is an opportunity for constructive empathy. It's not enough to just feel the pain that someone else is going through or whatever concern that they're going through, but to actually be able to do something about it. And it also makes you grateful for the blessings that you have. In terms of how I give, I work in the nonprofit space, so I feel like sometimes that's like 50, 60 hours of my week. So I'm fortunate in that sense that the nonprofit world provides that opportunity to both give and receive, for the vast majority of my day. But when I have time, I like to get some shifts in at Philabundance, but otherwise just through contributions. We've been blessed. And so whatever we can give, I really liked that if you have a dime or a nickel, give it. That really is powerful. And so that's—
Don't they add up? They really add up, right? We oftentimes, I think, can say, oh, no one wants this dollar. You find a penny and, no one wants this. And it's like, oh yeah, because collectively, I always try to remind people collectively, look at all those pennies in a piggy bank, and you go and you dump it out. And isn't it funny? I see, of course, Joanne shaking her head. Joanne, and you've had that experience where when you dump it out and you find out it was like $80, you're like, that was just by picking pennies out of the couch, and I say that simply because that's the truth, because collectively, look at what you can do, and being humble enough in my case to say, hey, pick that up. It matters, always humble. So I want to divide this one 2 and 2. We're going to go until about 11:10 on this session. And I want to get to 2 remaining questions. What challenges have you faced raising money, raising awareness, or getting new members? And the last question in this session will be, what advice do you have for other members in the giving community? So Let's divide these up a little bit, and I'm going to just do them sort of by how I'm feeling logically about your different missions. So Hug, I'd like you to address that about challenges raising money, if you've had those, and I can't imagine a nonprofit that has not at times, and also weighing in on this question briefly. I'd like to have you weigh in on this, Fran.
Okay,
Yes.
so basically, that's the story of our lives in terms of difficulties. The Hindu American Foundation is an advocacy and educational organization. And so we educate the public about Hinduism and Hindus. And we advocate for the well-being of not just Hindus, but all people on the planet. Those are very abstract terms. It's not, hey, you give me $1 and I'm going to provide a free lunch. You give me $1 and I'm going to teach this child how to read. That stuff is really tangible. Advocacy and education, sometimes the impact is intangible or it's so long-term that it's difficult to imagine. And so I would say that's probably our number one struggle. But for us, whether I think the most touching gift that we've had was 50 cents from a kid who came and saw our presentation and took whatever was in their pocket and put it in an envelope, to someone who donated $100,000 commitment for over 10 years, so 1 million. So, when it comes with abundance, but just convincing them of the value is the biggest struggle.
Wow. And even seeing forward, as you said, over 10 years, that means you really believe that this mission can make a difference over time. Fran, quickly.
Yeah. I think one of the most difficult things for us when we saw a need, we had to change a culture. Similar, perhaps, again, I see parallels with the gun control. We had to change a culture, and that takes time, and it takes trust, and it takes repetition. Here's something so many times, and then after a while you begin to say, hey, my life experiences support this. And I think that we just have to realize, as was just pointed out, good things take time. And also, you have to remain flexible. You can't come up with a 10-year plan and expect to change society or change culture thinking about with a 10-year plan. Times change, plans change, remain flexible, and think of it as bottoms up. It's not a matter of what you people need is, it's bottom up.
I want to get
to needs.
Yeah, thank you, Fran. I want to get to, because we're right at 11:10, but I do want to get to our fifth question, and we would have accomplished kind of the homework that they've given me here. So interesting to hear your perspectives. I want to just get in, what advice do you have for other organizations, basically for other members in the giving community? I do want to ask this question very quickly. Joanne, if you could weigh in on this before we kind of close this one out. And I'd like to also hear from Shani.
Okay, the best thing that you can do, don't be afraid, adapt to the changes that society needs the assistance in. Somebody has to be the leader. Somebody has to take that step forward. And you know what? Grab your village if you have to start. Your village is going to listen to you, and you are close knit. From that, it will grow. And you just have to trust and believe. And you just have to pedal, keep walking, and it's going to happen. You just have to believe it and put the time in.
Keep moving forward. Okay,
Yes.
I hear you, Joanne. And let's get to Shani.
Sure. I guess if I had one piece of advice, I'd recommend to make time to do things the old-fashioned way. It's really easy to promote your cause, promote your visions on social media or by email or even text message, but it's always going to pale in comparison to picking up the phone or knocking on a door and having a personal one-on-one conversation with someone that you can communicate your passion to, you can inspire to hop on your bandwagon, so to speak. You'll get a much better return on the time that you've allocated to your cause if you do things the old-fashioned way.
All right, so you're saying kind of like getting out there, meeting, talking, seeing, being with others, and of course, we miss some of that, right? Definitely.
Women are better at
time,
doing that than anybody
right?
else. So like
In the time
that's
that we're in. So thank you so very much. There's a quote from, and this is actually from one of the gentlemen in our community. Wish I had a chance to say I had met Denzel Washington, but one that I haven't met so far. But one quote that interested me was that he said, at the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about who you've lifted up and who you've been able to help become better. It's about what you've given back. So always something to think about there, because sort of when we say when, it's really about, I always say, what will people remember? Your title or how you made them feel. So I thank each and every one of you. I'm going to ask Kyle to direct us here as we go to our next panel, but we do certainly thank Joanne Caesar, Suhag Shukla, Sadria Schaefer, Fran Sykes, and Shani Knuckles for joining us. Excellent thoughts from everybody, and continued success with your organizations. Keep going, keep doing, keep giving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll prepare for our next panel. Hello, Kyle.
We will. Okay. Hopefully now you can hear me. Well, I'll never get this mute thing right. But I just want to remind people that they are able to ask questions of this panel and of Dr. Mesh in the chat section, and we are keeping an eye out in that area, and we're going to address those questions at the very end. So we are in the process of bringing up our next panel, and I'm going to turn things back over to Jennifer. Thank you.
Kyle, thank you so much. That was so enlightening. Again, everyone, if anyone is just joining us for the first time, wonderful morning, very inspiring to hear and talk about in our local community of South Jersey, and a bit beyond as well about why we give, how we give, and making our communities better. Once again, I'm Jennifer Lewis Hall, one of the anchors here at PHL 17. I'm actually in our studio as we speak, and thankful for everybody that helped to connect us together this morning. I'm also the host and executive producer of Politics in Focus. And that show is on Saturdays and Sundays, talking about giving and getting some insights into how we can do that and uplifting each other. So our second panel is on how we give. So we just talked about why we give and heard some very insightful comments about when the need is great, you answer the call, about giving, about that being ingrained in you from early on in your life. And now we look to how we do that. So joining us on this particular panel discussion is Sharon Hobson. She is president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Theta Pi Omega chapter. And with all disclosure, that is the sorority that I'm a member of, and so happy to be part of that illustrious organization as well. Janice Wardle is with us. She is the South Jersey chapter president and Eastern Regional chaplain of the Continental Societies, and also very familiar with them, with a connection there as well, being a member. Kim Moon, Leadership Council member and Grant Chair, Impact 100, South Jersey. Maria Myers, Executive Director, Jewish Family and Children's Services of South Jersey. And also Suzanne Gehu is with us, President and CEO of Thrive Public Affairs. Welcome, everybody. Janice, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. How are you today?
Hi, there you are. So great to see you. Kim.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, there you are. Great to see you, Kim. Marla.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, good morning, Marla. And Suzanne.
Hello.
Hi, there we go. Great to see you. And we, of course, are going to welcome welcome Sharon Hobson when she's able to join us as well and get her connected. So I feel like I called everybody's name like it was the first day of school this morning, but that's what Zoom calls will make you do, right? You want to make sure that everybody is present and accounted for, and you're trying to make it, as if everyone's right in the room with you. So hopefully not too zoomed out yet. We're going to make this all work. So how we give, this is a very interesting panel, I think, because when I thought about the concept of them breaking this up into two parts as to why we give and then how we give, that makes a lot of sense in those two parts and components. Well, our first question that we're going to be exploring is what motivates you personally to volunteer your time and donate your resources? And so many times I think I am interacting with so many nonprofits that I think that so many times people don't realize how those resources have to come together, how people are in their cars delivering things themselves. And, before they become this huge trust or entity, a lot of work is done on the ground. And that's probably each and every one of you. So I want to start with you, Marla, to talk a little bit about we want to get everybody in here. So as brief as we can keep it, but thorough, to talk about what motivates you. And you, of course, are with the Jewish Family and Children's Services.
Sure. So I'm the executive director. So I'm going to speak just for a moment about from the perspective of the people that I work with who are involved in the organization. And there's a couple of concepts that I want to bring up. The first one is that, and I think certainly for everyone who's on this call today, we see ourselves and those people see themselves as guardians of our community. And I think that they hold true to a concept that we in the Jewish community utilize, but everyone does universally, which is the idea of repairing the world, that we all have an obligation and a responsibility to make the world a better place. And, the simple idea that Gandhi said, that we all are striving to be the change that we want to see in the world. So I think that people are motivated by a plethora of things, and certainly Deborah spoke so beautifully about them, values alignment and personal attachment. But I think that when you look at the individual, there's so many parts that bring that together that motivate them to want to give and to become active in the community.
Janice, so much work that, of course, the Continental Societies and the local chapter right here does to help to uplift the community with children and education in mind. How is that motivation continued within your leadership and spirit of volunteerism?
Well, becoming the president, and you're right, the leadership is very important. I know in the last panel, they talked about spreading your own enthusiasm out to your members. And that's really what motivates me. I mean, I was very fortunate as a child to have a lot of volunteers help me in my life, between Girl Scout troop leaders, youth fellowship directors, parents from Jack and Jill. So I grew up and they were very hands-on. So since Continental Societies were focused on children, so we have a good direction of who we're helping. And I'm a very much of a hands-on, and my mission with our chapter and also with nationally is really more about touching these children and making that impact. We do follow a model of HERE, which is the areas we cover are health, education, employment, and recreation. So again, we have very guided directions, but just really having that motivation and being clear and telling, my members of, hey, how can we make a difference? And, might not be financially, but let's just put boots to the ground.
Right. Real human resources. Kim, tell us, of course, Impact 100 playing a part in many ways in order to make sure that others can continue their mission. Your motivation.
Okay. Well, I worked for many years in nonprofits in the Philadelphia area. And once I was able, through luck, through time, through my own personal circumstances, was able to join with a group of other women, which is what we are, Impact 100 South Jersey. We are a group of women. We're a women's collective grant making organization. We award grants to nonprofits in our 4-county region of Burlington, Camden, Gloucester, and Cumberland counties. So coming from a nonprofit background, knowing the important work that nonprofits do in our communities, and being able to work with other women to make meaningful grants to nonprofits in our area is extremely motivational and beneficial, I think, for me personally. I'm really happy to be able to bring my skills and background to this and to really spark that interest and that awareness and that same feeling of passion with other women who may not come from that, who may not be aware of all the work the nonprofits are doing to make a difference in our communities, and then feel the value of being able to help them do their work more effectively.
Yeah, I understand. So certainly talking about that drive within yourself, and that actually helps you to inspire others is what I'm hearing. I want to get to a second question and other panelists with us here to have you all weigh in on this one as well. Marla, I'd like you to talk a little bit about this, but I want to make sure I get to Suzanne as well. I'm still waiting to see if Sharon will be able to join us, but I want to talk about it. It says the question essentially describing the decision-making process for issuing grants or making those community contributions. I always say the need is great. You know, whether people are talking about how well or what have you the economy is doing, there's always a need. There's always a need. There's always someone who is in need of something and could benefit from help or enhancing our communities in some way. Suzanne, I should say, can you jump in here and tell us about that? Again, describing the decision-making process as you look at issuing those grants or making community contributions.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. So I have had the pleasure of working with nonprofits and in the healthcare space for 20 years and seeing the things that work well in the community and sometimes the circumstances where you set out to do good, but maybe you don't address the root cause. It's really helped to evolve what Thrive does today for community organizations in helping to look at the authentic need and looking at how can we make sure that we fundraise and make sure that it's sustainable to help those organizations deliver community initiatives. So for example, when working with boards, making sure that the board members are engaged and understand that their giving will drive grant-making gifts to the organization. So making sure that your board members are giving at a level that is on par with nonprofit standards. I just worked with a nonprofit over the summer where they only had 50% giving of all of their board members. And I said, listen, we have to get to 100% board giving, and everybody, if you save $20 a week, you'll get there.
And you're saying, so in order for the organization to work from within, the board that's also has a fiduciary duty or what have you, needs to be the one that is making sure that that drives the process.
Yes.
As well. Is it hard to, particularly difficult when so many nonprofits, and I hear from so many organizations all the time, a lot of events like we're doing are virtual now, some walks aren't happening and galas and events aren't happening. What have you found that you can do to try to cut through that specifically?
Yeah, I've actually seen so much of an increase in social impact giving across all sectors, from food access to housing. I think that COVID-19 has, if anything, uplifted the wantingness of people to give what they can give. And, you know, we can all give with our time and our talent and our treasure. And especially in bringing in those that might not be familiar with an organization and might be prepared to give a gift right away, we work to engage them in volunteering first, to be boots on the ground and to see firsthand, you know, what the impact of that organization is, and then later kind of curating that passion to make or to want to make a larger gift.
Something I want to hear from everybody, if we can get around to everyone, again, being mindful of the length of our answers, is of what projects or accomplishments is the organization that you're in? What are you most proud of, and why? And so we talked a little bit about what each of you do, but if you could hone in on something that you said, this really defines us, and this is why I'm particularly proud of that. Let's start with Janice.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a pragmatic thrust, and health being one of them. Continental Societies is partnered with Colgate. We have brought, for the last 10 years, the Colgate dental screening van to elementary schools, to boys and girls clubs, and we have provided, just within the South Jersey chapter, and we do this nationwide, but just within the South Jersey chapter, we have provided dental screenings for thousands of children. And we've been doing this project for 10 years. And we talk about, our politicians talk about having healthcare, which is wonderful, but dental care often is not included in that healthcare package. So we've talked about finding where there's a need. So we're very proud of, bringing kids and parents to the dentist, realizing, helping them to learn about dental hygiene and things of that nature. So, I'm very proud of that initiative, and just really finding that hole and filling that gap.
Yeah, and it really speaks to healthcare, health disparities. It speaks to so many different things. And I think that, of course, there are so many different studies, but we don't need a study to know that when we start early, really looking at our health and healthy communities, it impacts so much, right? Kim.
Oh, wow. There are many things that I think our organization has to be proud about. We started 3 years ago. In 2018, we awarded our first round of grants. We had 74 members, and by the time we awarded our grants this past June 2020, we had 186 members, and we're striving to get to 200 members this year. So we've given over $424,000 to nonprofits in our area. So very proud of that, and the growth that we're enjoying, and just spreading the word to the community, to members and prospective members about becoming involved with us. I'm proud that we've really generate awareness of a lot of smaller, off the radar nonprofits to our members who may not have been aware of their work and the difference that they're making in the community, and got more members involved with them. And I'm proud that we've been able to make some significant and impactful grants to nonprofits who may not have been able to find similar funding in South Jersey landscape, because there is a lot of limitations to the amount of funding available, especially in more rural counties of this area.
All right, Marla, and then Suzanne.
Sure. So JFCS has a long list of programming that we accomplish in the community each year. But I think that what I'm most proud of is the fact that we try so hard to be the voice for the people who need it most, and also to bring to light the issues in our community, which are so challenging and scary, but that we see the opportunity to make a change in terms of them. So some of the areas that during my tenure in the last 8 years that I'm enormously proud of our team for accomplishing are our work in the addiction space, in terms of educating the community, from children to their parents to grandparents. The work we've done in suicide prevention for teens and tweens, the LGBTQ+ programming that we have put forward for youth, and also for seniors, which is a very interesting part of that work. The work that we've done for Holocaust survivors, who many of whom are still living in our midst in Southern New Jersey, in fact, 150 of them. And we're always taking care of their needs and the isolation that they and other seniors are experiencing. We also spend an enormous amount of our resources working in food insecurity and food pantries, helping impoverished families, as well as families who are experiencing domestic violence. So it's being that voice for those who need it most.
Yeah, that's powerful. Suzanne.
I've been so blessed to work on so many projects, but I think the project that launched me into entrepreneurial business world that I'm in today is the virtual mobile farmers market. I dreamed a dream to create a healthy food access program for those that were living in food desert communities suffering from chronic disease. And I curated and held it like my third child for a year till it became a reality. And it quickly grew to become the nation's largest mobile farmers market. In the first year, it served over 10,000 families and distributed nearly 80,000 pounds of fresh fruits and vegetables to needy community members. And I also wanted to make sure that the design of that program would bring to communities the education that they would need to live a healthy lifestyle. So advocating to have that registered dietitian riding that bus every day year round really in my mind is one of the greatest accomplishments of my life so far.
Wow, that is absolutely wonderful. That is incredible. We were, in fact, you talked about sort of those decisions that led you down this path. That's really one of the questions as well, the decision-making process and choosing volunteer projects. And I'm thinking even, Marla, addressing that, if you could give us some insight into that, how you decide what projects will be the most pertinent. Obviously, some of that I'm sure is based upon the need you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many priorities and my agency is so robust. But there's actually something I did want to mention about how volunteers are selecting their projects and how women are selecting. We talked about this earlier, but it isn't just about the missions that they have and the things that they align with. I think that one of the beautiful things I've seen for women in our community is their interest in involving their families. And we heard about role modeling from some that their parents taught them how to give and why it's so important. But what I see so many times in our organization is that it's the mothers and sometimes the fathers too, they're awesome as well, bringing the kids and saying, we want to get the kids involved. So they'll bring the children to our food pantry. The child might do a project with their youth group and collect food to give to us. Or they might make bags for our domestic violence clients who might need a safety kit, it's called, so that they could flee quickly. And I think that there is a really beautiful thing that goes on in the community that all of us can participate in, those of us who have children, is teaching them the way through action and not just the giving part, because that creates a lifelong commitment to the community.
Well, and I think it's an education in itself. I think it's a class that it's that human class that, before you get to school and you volunteer, that example that shows that. And then of course it becomes a way of life. I see my nephews and other people now spending time on the holiday with others. And what a wonderful way of involving our littlest ones in the vision of being able to give and help and do, right? I always say that I learned so much myself by giving and doing. So it's so reciprocal. Janice, tell us about how you said your organization, of course, I'm familiar with Continentals, is very project driven. So it is defined by certain categories. But within that, looking at the volunteers, how then they define their projects? Is it by perhaps skill set and interest?
Exactly. The one thing that I think women do, or I try to do, is empowering our members and allowing them to choose their own passions. As you said, there are some that are, I have some very artistic people who are anytime, maybe we're giving Easter baskets, and I'm thinking of one of my members who just loves decorating and all types of things. And she just jumps up and just takes the lead. I'll get the baskets, I'll get the cellophane, I'll put a bow on it and all other types of things. So as you said, that skill set is very important, and that helps motivate them and get their passion. And then understanding that every member doesn't have to be involved in every single project. the JCC says, we have tons of projects. Well, I'm sure every volunteer isn't on the 50 committees. And that's the same way, we work within the Continentals, and letting the members understand that, don't feel guilty because you didn't go to the Christmas party. You were there for the Colgate van. So, that's the thing, because volunteers are working. They have other lives. So, allowing people within your organization to participate where they feel comfortable.
Wow, I'm actually, as you see, I'm multitasking. I'm checking on questions. So I'm fully involved in what's going on here. But if you see my eyes shift, that's kind of what I'm doing. I have a question. It's not on this piece of paper, but of course I ask questions all day long. One of them I want to hear from each of you about, and then we'll get to a couple of others before we take some other questions. How do you prevent or work with burnout? Because, I feel like when one project is accomplished, there's really, it's not that you then can go to the next one. I find that almost another's in the works. How do you do that, especially when we are looking at, as we said, a time where there was always a need, but I feel like that need is even broader now across our landscape. Can each of you weigh in on that? And we'll start with Janice and Shurop. We'll start with you, to Kim, Marla, and then Suzanne.
Burnout is a difficult one. And again, just looking at your members, Continental societies, we also have a sisterly bond, as some of the other organizations do as well. So, we have to lift each other up. Jennifer, as you know, sometimes we just have to do things for ourselves. We'll get together after a project and say, who wants to have lunch? Or, let's be honest, who wants to have a drink? So that's how we kind of, keep from that burnout of just saying, we don't necessarily want to be rewarded, but sometimes, you do have to.
But that's a reality though. That's why I want to talk about that, because volunteers and people who do and people who give, and, I think it was mentioned earlier as we were saying that, families participating, there's a lot of things people are dealing with. And so you want to continue to have folks volunteer, and you yourself, a lot of folks don't have a lot of resources with the organization. They'll tell me when they come on my show that, listen, I started this out of the back of my car. I've delivered 100 baskets this season. It was me and my kids, and we did it. So it's burnout is a reality, or feeling overwhelmed, or whatever way that may project itself. Before we go on to Kim addressing that, I want to just introduce Sharon Hobson, president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Theta Pi Omega Chapter. I believe she is now with us. Sharon, are you with us?
Yes, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. I had to switch computers. For some reason, my computer kept taking my face in and out. Well,
we're just so glad to have you. So whatever it was, it couldn't stop you from coming through. So the gremlins didn't win on this one, okay?
No.
We're talking a little bit about organizations right now and the amount of giving that they do, which is remarkable, but also trying to make sure that you pour, I call it, this is also a book, it's not a new philosophy, that you're dropping back into the bucket. So they say that you can't always take from the bucket because the bucket will become dry, right? So you've got to drop back into that bucket, restore it, restore self as well, to be able to go back out and do what you do. Tell us, as you can, pretty briefly about the sorority. And of course, I've told everyone, I feel like I'm part of a lot of the different parts of this panel in a lot of different ways, and happy to be so. But tell us a little bit about your mission and how you deal with going.
Well, Jennifer, as you are a part of our organization, we're a service to all mankind. And what keeps me going is that what's been instilled in me as a child, I always was taught to give back. And our organization, we give back all the time. And it's a blessing to give to others. It's not so much what you receive. And we are global. We have over 240 members in my current chapter. So therefore, there's a lot of us working at the same time for the cause. Some of the things that I am most proud of is how we are now giving to even women now with women's situations. Like right now, we're focused on breast cancer awareness. where we can't walk like we normally walk together, but we are walking at home and donating at home, giving out PSAs during the week, recognizing our members that have suffered and who have survived the cause. It's so many things that we're doing as an organization, giving back to our children. We have a program that's called #CAP. It's a college admissions process. We have that once a month. It's a workshop where we are introducing them to college and the alternatives outside of college. So we touch everybody in the community. And I want to be brief because I want to give other people an opportunity to speak. But Jennifer,
Yeah, well,
the strong
it's
component of
powerful.
everything that we do.
Yeah. It's powerful. It's powerful stuff. You all collectively, as I look at the screen and I think about the work you're doing, it just warms my heart and my spirit. So good to see you, Sharon Hobson. We heard from Janice, and again, just to motivate ourselves. I think we can't forget about each other and lifting each other up. Kim, Marla, Suzanne, best tip for staying whole yourself while you're giving. Kim?
I think I'm a founder of the organization, and I've been very involved with it for the past 3 years, but we have a lot of members with a lot of different talents, a lot of different perspectives and experiences. And, you know, when I was a fundraiser, we learned, well, people aren't going to give money unless you ask them. And since we have a lot of members to draw from, we feel we need to reach out and bring them through the pipeline and have them take on bigger roles in our organization. One of the good things about Impact is people can join and they don't feel they have to get involved, but there are many people who do want to get involved. And, you know, preventing burnout from us, from the founders, is getting more people involved, empowering them to take on bigger responsibility, and just keep, you know, working through our membership to give them that opportunity.
Marla, is it about time management? Some of the things we heard, you know, going way back, they would say you manage your time, and that kind of helps. It's one of those old school
I think that definitely helps. I think that in our culture, that self-care is not something that we practice well enough. So definitely self-care is something I think about. The other thing is sometimes to go on the road less traveled. So do something out of the box for yourself within the organization or elsewise that can give you a fresh perspective. And one of the things I do as an executive that really refreshes me is when I'm feeling like completely overwhelmed, I'm visioning, I'm fundraising, I'm supervising, I'm coaching, is, you know what I do? I go to one of our programs and I hang out with the clients. And it is so refreshing, and it makes me, it just refreshes me to think, well, what is this all about? And I would suggest to anybody, just go on the road less traveled, something you don't usually do, and that might help. And also what Janice said is that you should talk to your comrades, talk to other people about how you're feeling. It's okay to feel that way, and it's okay to step out.
It sure is. And I like what something that Janice said, and of course, a little bit of everyone. I'm giving you a little bit of a tour because I wanted to make sure that as I was plugged in here, I didn't lose you. So I'm plugged into our kitchen set over here. So that's why you're getting a little bit of a studio tour as to where we are. I'm like, I'm not losing this group now with a low battery. The only one we didn't hear from on this was Suzanne, and then I'm going to check our time, ladies. Suzanne, weigh in, please. How do you fill the bucket?
So I'm very passionate as an individual. And so I would say that I've learned to try to balance the work-life balance situation a little bit better. So now that when I unplug, I truly unplug. So some people like to take a summer vacation and maybe a spring vacation. I spread out my time so that when I know I'm finishing a project and I might need 3 days off during the week so that I can love myself and fill myself back up to become the supernova I want to be back in the community. That's what I do. I just take that selfish time. But I've also worked over the years to curate my team and the people I work with so that I have inspired them or ignited that passion that they can help carry on whatever needs to be done. But we all have to take better care of ourselves, because ultimately our product and what we deliver out into the community will be better because of it.
I'm going to go to one of our last questions and then just take a couple of questions. I think that I did get some via text. And I'll probably break this one up because I do want to talk about, what advice do you have for other members of the giving community? And then I may just take, and I'll see where we are with regard to one more before we wrap up. But let's just go through, and if everyone could be as brief as they can be, what's your best advice for people who are saying, you've done this on such a big scale, or you've continued to do it for so long, like Kim, and Janice has been in these positions and all of it. What's your best advice by saying, I might be small right now. What do I need to do? Suzanne, we'll start with you. You're up.
I mean, you can be small, but you can be mighty, right? And so find what's passion and calling in your heart to do good in the community and focus on that if you're starting small. Volunteer, give your time, give your talent, and give whatever treasure you have. And then you can build from that. But, we can all do something. We can all do something great in our community. So small and mighty. That's my philosophy.
All right. Sharon Hobson.
Well, our chapter is very large, and when you're large, you tend to not have everybody do everything. It's always this small core. But something that I would advise is that you get in where you fit in. You do something that you are passionate about. Because when you find that you have passion for something, you're always going to give 100%.
All right. Janice, and then Kim.
I find, don't be afraid to ask for help, and asking for people to be, a part of your organization or to partner with your organization. So often when I talk to people about helping with certain things, they're like, oh, no one has ever asked me before. So that's really the biggest thing, just open out your mouth, and even when you're out of organization mode, talk about your organization and just ask, do you want to participate? I mean, hey, Jen, how do we get you back? I just said, Jen, come back.
You did.
Said,
You
oh.
did. And there was no hesitation. It was absolutely. I was like, because it was funny. It was like, well, nobody really asked me. I mean, no one should have to ask you, but I was like, life gets busy and things happen, and we're all caregivers and parents and mothers and,
right.
Or whatever it is you're doing. And I'm no different. So,
right.
But you did, you said, you know what, we can use your time and talents.
Yeah.
And so, hey, I always say one more pot on the stove. We need you, right? We need you. You can stretch, you can do it.
And as I said, some people talked about having their kids. I do have to say, Jennifer is a generational continental. It was her mom who spent 30, 40 years in the organization. And so I just, I played the mom card. Your mom would be so disappointed if you weren't so.
And she meant it too, folks. She meant it. So somebody said Supernova. That's all of you guys. Kim, and if I missed anybody, let me know. Do I have Kim and Marla, right? I think I'm there with this last question.
Well, building on what Janice said about asking for help, I would also add just be open to learning about what you don't know. Don't feel that you have to have all the answers and be the authority. And, it's okay. Turn around, find someone else who knows the answers or can give you the guidance that you need. That it's okay to do that.
All right, Marla.
I would say to do things that bring you joy. And also do them with people that you care about.
Wow, that's powerful stuff. There are a couple of questions that I'll make sure that I share with Kyle, and perhaps what we can do is after this, you all could maybe email in, given whatever format or however Kyle wants to do that, some answers to share with the community that we've now established as well. But one of them is giving perhaps from certain communities not always being recognized. And one other question about research that Dr. Mesh had. And the third question that I did see was, will the screens that were provided earlier be available? So those are things that we can work with Kyle to get everybody informed about whatever loose ends we need to tie up. I'm going to thank you on behalf of myself and PHL 17 for just being able to be present in this moment. Every time I meet with someone new or I learn something new about our community, that's what fuels me after 30 years of being a journalist across different networks and telling a whole lot of stories. And I have never, ever grown tired of looking at telling a story as a way to provide a voice to a person, a community, an issue, or something that could hopefully inform and oftentimes make a situation better, and sometimes expose what is not going on and perhaps should be. So many different and multifaceted ways to look at community, but I would never change being involved and being able to help. So thank you on behalf of myself and PHL 17 for being able to be with you. You all are amazing. Keep giving, keep doing. You're great. Kyle?
Hi, everybody. I'm gonna ask Jennifer if she will just stick around for a couple more minutes to ask one or two of the questions that have been showing up in the chat box. You just tell us, Jennifer, if you are able to see questions that have been chatted to you. If not, we can come up with another process.
Yeah, do you have any other ones? I do want to address one that's here. It said different types of giving. So it says some types of giving from certain communities not being recognized. And this is a good question, ladies. This talked about the panelists speaking about changing cultures around giving. I like that question. Very important. Can folks speak to any unique differences in any of the communities that they represent and how folks, can, I think, be, they're asking, more open to giving or be exposed to giving in different types of communities and cultures? You can each take a stab at that if you'd like. Sharon, do you want to start? That's a good question. I know, a lot of the fraternities and sororities also look at other, when we say a community can be anything. I mean, the HBCU community,
right.
The breast cancer community. What do you think about that in exposing giving in areas that talk about various aspects of our community?
Well, since you're touching on HBCUs, and that's very near and dear to me as I am a graduate of an HBCU, we had a tremendous international campaign where we raised over $1.3 million in a day to give towards the HBCUs that are struggling with funding and not able to maintain as other institutions. So that is like something that was worldwide that our international president put together 3 years ago. And every year she succeeded in that. So that's something that we're very, very proud of, and I'm a strong advocate for as well.
Do you think, though, that part of that has to be, and as we get to the other panelists, letting people know about that mission, yes. Letting people know about a deficit in funding, or letting people know that without these institutions that have existed, two of which are so historic right in our area, sometimes people will say, well, I didn't know that Cheney and Lincoln were here.
Right.
And so maybe it's part exposure as well. Janice, exposing different communities and that giving has many faces.
One of the things that we do is, this is South Jersey, so we're all very small and local. I find that letting our local government know what we're doing, I mean, I would think just about everybody knows somebody on their town council or an assembly person. So they're very good people to get the word out and to partner with is your local government. Last year, the township of Glassboro was building a new children's playground, and they wanted volunteers to put it together. And we were one of the organizations that they just called and said, hey, can you come out and help us build this playground? So I think take advantage of where we are in South Jersey, and that a lot of our officials, our church leaders, our government leaders are very accessible, and they will definitely promote your cause and will help support it. whether it's, financially or in kind. Local municipalities are always welcome to give in-kind services.
Well, that's actually really interesting as well. Kim, you've been able to really get out there and fundraise, and then impact others through fundraising. What do you think, is that also being a part of a community in a culture of giving, or developing a culture of giving? How would you say that formed and you've been able to spearhead that?
Wow.
For your organization?
I think that our members primarily come from such different areas of the community, such different backgrounds. And I think that the common thread is a desire to give back, and not necessarily knowing how, because a lot of them haven't come from that kind of background. So I think so much of what we do is word of mouth in terms of drawing new members, explaining what we do, and showing that the impact our grants can make, and how by bringing women together, their donations can just have such a more exponential impact than if we do it individually. So it's just a lot of talking it up to people and really reaching out to everyone in our groups who may want to join in with other women and do this kind of work in the community.
And that's a very interesting way of putting that, because you're saying not everyone knows how to do this. Not everyone, they may feel that they have a desire to do it. But that's so interesting, because we don't just always wake up and say, oh, I know exactly how to do this, make it effective, make it efficient, make sure that I have outreach and resources and volunteers. I'm sure there's a lot involved in that. And that may actually be sort of one of our questions for those who haven't gotten to the level that you are, how you get started. One of the things that someone also said here is that, any input from those impacted by giving, they said that's absolutely essential, but how else will you know what impact that has and what the needs are and how to modify those needs? I think that if you can answer this one for Marla, because you're out working with seniors, you're working, in many different capacities, food banks, which have just, over the years, the need is tremendous. Are you measuring the impact some way and then determining and forecasting what's ahead? What's the most efficient, effective way?
So not to get too technical and scare anyone, but we have to figure out how to measure things all the time. So we employ the logic model. We also develop outcome measures, and then we derive those outcomes from a variety of sources, including the data that we collect through elaborate systems and also through client surveys, so that we can understand if the behavioral changes that we wish to make have occurred. And I have to tell you that these are such important planning tools that are newer in the nonprofit sector. We all knew about them 10, 20 years ago, but we were a little scared of them. Nowadays, if you don't have these kinds of tools to understand what you're doing, where you're going, you really can't be strategic and plan ahead. And also your grantors demand it of you, and rightfully so. They should know, not, oh, did everyone enjoy themselves? What does that tell us? We need to know, did we affect the change that we wanted to? If it was food pantry clients, did we help them to get out of the situation that they were in, and so on. So it's fun stuff, and it's a little technical, and it's also heartfelt.
Wow. This is a question. Thank you so much for that. This is actually, we have a question for Dr. Mesh. If she is still on with us, I do want to just read this question. Will your slides, of course, some folks are saying, how can they get access to some of the information on the slides? And also, do you track how much of U.S. philanthropy is tied to women versus men?
Okay. No, we don't. I mean, we look at, well, I should say the first question is absolutely you can get in touch. Kyle has the slides and she can distribute them to everybody on this call. And the second part of that question was the differences in men's giving dollar amount versus,
right.
Okay. So yes, but we can only do it for single men and single women. because all of the data that's collected is at the household level. So we know exactly what the likelihood is an amount when we just compare single-headed households of men versus women. For couples, men and women within the same household, we are trying to peel that onion a little bit more to determine what factors influence the giving in the household between the couple. But in terms of the household level, data is only collected at the household level. So it's hard to look within married couples. But I do want to answer one question. I know we're running out of time. I think this was a great question that Eric posed. And the question was, does research go deeper into the motivations for women to join giving circles? And how much does it begin an accessible philanthropic tool for communities or people who have been excluded from institutional philanthropy? Do you see that question, Jennifer?
I do.
And,
I do.
And it's a wonderful question. And I just wanted to, because Kyle brought that up at the beginning about, so here's just a very overview, is that in the whole Giving Circle research, giving circles usually are bonding experiences. That is, different identity groups come together, African-American groups, African-American women, Latinx women, Gen X women. So it's usually this idea, it's called homophily in social networks, where birds of a feather flock together. So that is one of the issues in these social networks, is that you get very homogeneous people coming together in these networks. But you also have networks that are bridging. So you're seeing all of this stuff happening across the world of these different networks, different collective giving circles coming together for the greater good. So an example is Women's Funding Network. So it's this idea of bridging versus bonding, but it's also, I think Eric made an excellent point that communities not being recognized, mainly because I think of this definition of philanthropy. So what is philanthropy? You know, we have this idea that it's always, you know, the Warren Buffetts, the Bill Gates, the big money, those signing the giving pledge, but different communities, different races, different ethnicities, they have a different definition of philanthropy, and it's not giving money. So I think our charge from a research point of view, which is what we're really working on now with this Next Gates funding, is to broaden that definition of philanthropy. And how do we include all groups from different backgrounds in understanding of philanthropy from a much broader definition about who is a philanthropist, what is philanthropy, and how can we make sure that we are including all groups, all different sort of diverse communities, different backgrounds, in the different ways in which people are engaging in philanthropy. Mm-hmm. So that's, you know, just a really, I thought it was a great question, and I could go on and on about that, but it's a very important issue, especially in this time of diversity and inclusion, that we have to have a responsibility of making sure that we are including all different kinds of groups in our definition of who is a philanthropist and what is philanthropy according to a broader definition of that.
Well, and I think that the idea is that, you know, as well, that you know, can support people and be philanthropic in your efforts or giving in your efforts, whatever word works. For people that look nothing like you, are not like you, are not your next door neighbor, don't live in your community or what have you, but could still have a similar issue or circumstance. Mm-hmm. So, and, you know, and no group is homogeneous, but just knowing that there's so much to learn in giving about reaching even outside perhaps of your cocoon or where you are or your community. So there's so much to learn about that. And I think that diversity in giving, there's probably lots of studies and things that speak about this, but it would be interesting to see how different things are funded and where those dollars go, and, you know, and to have equity and parity in giving as we look across a landscape and communities as well. Very, very important if we're, I think, serious too about the next step in also, or steps in what giving means. Just things to think about, but certainly so proud and happy to be with you all today. And certainly proud to be in a community where so many people are doing what they can, and so many that I meet don't always get recognized. And I just always want to let them know that everything they're doing enhances every place we live. And I'm proud of every effort, even if they're never on a setting like this, but that they be recognized in some way today. Thank you so much. Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you to Dr. Mesh, and thank you to Kyle. It's been a pleasure to spend the day with you. Good morning.
Thank you, Jennifer. We're going to move right on to our closing remarks with June Grushka-Rosen.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be with you. It's not lost on me that my closing remarks are led exactly by where this incredible day took us today, about how we work together. And I'd like to start by giving just a few serious shout outs to some of the brilliant women that made today possible, and then discuss quickly some of the ideas that were ignited. And finally, I'd like to look at a few tools, because I'm a coach, and look at a few other things. A million brilliant ideas were brought up today about how we move this initiative forward, how we give and why we give. But I'd like to add just a couple extra things as we move on from our day into our afternoon. So we need to recognize this skilled moderator. Oh my goodness gracious, Jennifer Lewis Hall. You are an extraordinary moderator. And she's the kind of moderator that it's a dream moderator. And I'm sure moving forward, everybody would always want to have Jennifer Lewis Hall to moderate everything that we have going forward. And I know we would like to extend a giant thank you to everyone feels the same way around this esteemed Dr. Mesh, who enlightened us about women and bold philanthropy driving our passion. We just learned so much from you, Dr. Mesh. Thank you so much. And if only we were all together, Kyle, if only we were all together, shoulder to shoulder. I know this would be the moment, Kyle, when everybody would stand shoulder to shoulder to recognize that it was you that gave birth to this vision today for this conference. And Kyle, she recognized that we needed to expand our understanding and the appreciation of the diverse South Jersey group and organizations and the women that worked so hard to drive those successful initiatives. You are amazing. And of course, we're all blown away. We're all blown away by the phenomenal panelists representing inspiring organizations. Oh my goodness, thank you for sharing on such a personal level. Giving is personal, and you sharing some of those challenges and some of those vulnerabilities brings us all of us strong women closer together. We are blown away by what each of you contributes to make this community what it is. So today was an important day for us, women in our South Jersey community, and quite frankly, our country. We need each other now more than ever. And you give so much. Oh my goodness, you give so much. The challenges are great, and it can be daunting, and facing them can be daunting. And creating this idea of how do we all come together? What do we do now, right? What do we do now? We had this amazing day, and we got to the place where we're looking at, can we move this initiative forward? Can we work together more by creating a design, by bringing our desires together to be a more inclusive community and experience for all the women and all the organizations involved to serve the communities with a greater vision of embracing each other in a whole new way. So in speaking with one of my brilliant colleagues yesterday about all of you, we started to talk about what are the possibilities? What are the possibilities of impact when we come together? And I was thinking about one of my favorite clients, Well, all my clients are favorite clients, but she's an extraordinary director of an organization that helps to raise up women and girls. And she is still on fire. And after 18 years, she says to me, June, all I want is I just want more. Is it asking too much? I just want more. We all do, right? We all do. We all want more. And we have this amazing opportunity today to get more. And I think that what we experience today is something that we were all hungry for. So thank you again, Kyle, and thank you to this amazing committee that brought everybody together so that we could learn more about each other, so that we could begin to vision together. What are the possibilities? I love a quote from a writer and a filmmaker. Her name is Tess Clark. And she states regarding shifts in community, or just shifts in general, that you don't need to believe it. You just need to be willing to imagine it. So let's imagine it. We've done that today. We imagined it, a diverse coalition of women who have a deep understanding now of why and how we all give based on who we are, and the richness of a new collection of women forming a coalition based on desire and design to make it look a little bit different, right? To make South Jersey's organizations coming together to look a little bit different. And I want to use a few little simple action steps in effort to keep that moving forward. And I'm going to describe those to you. So Kyle, in the beginning of her opening remarks, threw out a formula. And that formula is 1 + 1 = 3. Whew. I love that equation. I love that equation. 1 + 1 = 3. And she said, or more. And I love that. 1 + 1 = 3 or more. And I know that without a doubt, if the women on the panel, if these women from the organizations, all the people, we had over 135 people sign up for today. If we all do that, 1 + 1 = 3 or more, in terms of bridging the gap between these organizations and having a bigger vision for South Jersey and how we can work together, anything is possible. So here are the tools, and I'm going to give you these tools. You can write them down, and they're simple. And of course, it's not lost on me that these tools were brought up by every panel member, by Dr. Mesh. Everyone along the way managed to bring these tools up, and that these are what they have in their back pocket, and that's how these organizations have grown. The tools are these 3: the art of listening, mastering the ask, and the gift of gratitude. Those simple, powerful tools are meaningful steps to move ideas, these ideas that we discussed today, these important ideas that we discussed today, to grow South Jersey and to interact with each other across the lines with our organizations to build a more inclusive community of givers. So here's the art of listening. This is something that I think will be important, and something, again, that you all do. The art of listening requires the ability to hear, starting with your own thoughts. So when we hear start with our own thoughts, we need to do that one thing. We need to implement that idea of self-care. Because if we don't implement the idea of self-care, our minds are so filled with so many things that we can't even hear what it is that our own thoughts are telling us. And those own thoughts are the initiators to being able to come up with great ideas, to be able to move initiatives, to be able to cross boundaries, to be able to work together in different organizations. And then, in terms of the art of listening, is then, and this is important based on everything we heard today, that we need to open our hearts and be willing to listen fully to what others are saying, because we don't always have an understanding. How much did we learn today? How much new information did we learn today? Because we were willing to come and give our time and give our devoted energy to listening in a whole new way. And then secondly, master the ask. And so many people talked about how your organizations went from A to Z by what? By asking, by simply asking for what? For what we want. What do we want? Simply ask. I thought it was amazing that somebody in their organization said, gee, well, thanks for asking. Nobody ever asked me to do this before. I'd be happy to do that. I'm sort of waiting for someone to ask. So mastering the ask is important. And I encourage you, don't wait for permission. I know Dr. Mesh would be like, yes, 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 don't wait for permission. Simply ask for what you want. And lastly, and Dr. Mesh talked about this as well, and we all talked about this today, it's something that I know that we all believe wholeheartedly in, is the gift of gratitude. We can reach out to someone, and this is what I'd love for you guys to do today, is reach out to someone that inspired you today. Reach out to someone on the panel that inspired you today, and simply tell them how they impacted you. Who knows where that could lead? Who knows what that one action step could lead to in terms of a new fabulous initiative of working together, or maybe just a new fabulous friend. And both, quite frankly, are important and valuable in terms of the work that we need to do. And they both have the wings for us to be able to set South Jersey on fire. I believe in this vision. I know Kyle believes in this vision. It came to a head as this conference came to an end. This is important. This work we're doing is important. You are an amazing group of people. Now, what I'd love for you to do is indulge me just a little bit. When I go out and I speak, and a lot of us are missing this opportunity to come together. I, for one, this morning missed the coffee and the Danish and the little bagel, right? That happens when we go to the conference. And more importantly, I missed connecting with you. I know we're missing each other. So what I'd like to do is I'd like you to indulge me for us to get, okay, maybe it's a little bit of exercise, but maybe it's also just another way to connect. I'd love for you to take your hands up on your screens, and we'll find another way to connect, even in the pandemic, even on a Zoom. And what I'd love for you to do is I'd love for you to dream bigger. Like my client, I want you to want even more for yourselves. Yes, that includes self-care, more for your organizations, more for your mission, more for your country, more for the populations that you serve, and more for why we give in a whole new way. Understanding that we came together today. Yes, we came. I see Kyle's raising her hand. We came together today for connection. And that's how we move forward. That's how we create a different vision for our community. And a better and a more understanding community, and opportunities for ourselves and each other. Now, because I love to push the envelope, I want you to put your hands on your heart as we come to a close. Put your hands on your heart. And I want you each to know, every one of you to know, that you are powerful and you are a giving force. And I can't wait to hear how your experience to take one inspired action on the heels of today's incredible program, what it will feel like. And I promise 1 + 1 does equal 3. And I am so excited for all of us. Thank you, the extraordinary women of South Jersey and the WWG Give program organizers. You are rock stars, and we are so blessed to have been here today. High five, ladies. High five. Woo-hoo. Kyle has a few closing things she'd like to say.
I do. I want to thank everybody for being a part of today's program, all of our attendees. I want to make our speakers, our panelists, and thank you for being patient with us as we struggled a little bit with technology. This is all a ongoing learning experience, so we appreciate your patience. The organizations that were represented here today are just a few that are impacting the quality of life here in South Jersey. And I am so thrilled that our committee was able to bring these women together and that we could share their stories with you. We'd like to once again thank Community Foundation of South Jersey and Weber Gallagher. We'd also like to thank Dr. Mesh and Jennifer Lewis Hall. They were both outstanding. You can watch Jennifer's show, Politics in Focus, weekly on WPHL 17. And know that the registration fees that were collected for today are going to be split between the COVID Response Fund for South Jersey, which is managed by the Community Foundation of South Jersey, and also Project Sarah, which is a domestic violence program that's managed by Jewish Family and Children's Services. So thank you for the work that they do. And I'd like to personally thank our steering committee. They are the reason that each and every person is here today. Our steering committee really did the legwork and just the reaching out to our local audience to make sure that they could be a part of something that I think is pretty unique in our region. So please stay safe and healthy as you continue your path to improving life in South Jersey. And on behalf of the Why We Give Steering Committee, have an absolutely wonderful weekend. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.